Welcome students. Today's discussion period is about learning about differential form of Gauss law in vacuum. So we will be able to achieve differential form of Gauss law in vacuum. First of all, if we know the integral form of Gauss law in vacuum. Let me write down the definition of Gauss law in vacuum. Definition. So it states that the total electric flux through a closed surface in vacuum is always equal to 1 upon epsilon naught times the charge enclosed by closed surface. That is double integration of E over a closed surface is always equal to 1 upon epsilon naught t times the q, where q is the charge enclosed. The closed surface can be of any shape. Let us say this is a closed surface in vacuum and it contains charge. The total charge, it could be minus charge also somewhere. The net charge in the surface S is q. Then this formula is valid. So if you have any doubt about this relation, it is actually from the definition of Coulomb's law. You can very easily get it. You have proved this Gauss law by using Coulomb law in your plus 2 class by using the Coulomb law for a point charge or a monopole. So if you have any doubt about this definition and this expression, kindly ask me. Please remember the double integration here means it is a surface integration. I could also put this symbol S below it, but it is not required at all if you are using double integration. Is it okay? Should I move ahead? Please speak. Okay, I will go to the next part. Let us now want derive differential form from equation 1. Equation 1 is our standard equation. So therefore we will take equation 1 as a standard equation, and from equation number 1 we will do the second equation. This is equation number 1. Okay, let me take a small volume, because charge is distributed within the closed surface. So this charge will be on the surface as well as inside it. So because according to definition, charge is enclosed. So the charge which permanently belongs to the surface is called enclosed charge. So suppose there is a small volume dV, and suppose this small volume contains a small charge dq. Let us say the volume charge density of this particular region is rho. We know that rho is equal to volume charge density is given by charge contained per unit volume. So it will be charge upon volume. Therefore, you will get it dq is equal to rho dv. This is equation number 2. But mind it please that rho is a variable. Please remember that rho is a variable. because in your school physics you studied applications of Gauss law, and all these applications in school physics were for uniformly distributed charge. You discussed uniformly distributed charges only. For example, you discussed wire charge, uniformly distributed charge on a wire, then you found out the electric field due to a uniformly distributed charged plane sheet, then you found it for two sheets for a capacitor, and all the applications that you have studied in your school physics were of uniform distribution. Now rho is a variable, so that should be taken care of. Now this is a small charge here. Since the charge is also present here, but this charge may not be.
You are now muted. You are now unmuted.
Okay, students, so there is a charge here also. So that charge may not be dq, it may be different, dq dash, because charge is non-uniformly distributed. In our case, the charge is non-uniform distributed. So because rho is a variable, so for same volume, and you will have different charges, and in the whole region of the body. So if I want to find total charge in the surface, so let q is equal to total charge enclosed by surface then it should be equal to sum of all such charges. But all these charges are distributed within the body of the surface, so it will be simply equal to volume integration of elementary charge dq, or I will now go to the next page. So I can simply write that by using equation number 2. Therefore q will be triple integration of dq, and it will be triple integration of rho dv using equation number 2. So this is the equation for the total charge enclosed by the closed surface. Now we can apply Gauss divergence theorem on the left hand side of equation number 1. According to this, double integration of E dot ds could be very easily written as triple integration of del dot E and dv. So this is my equation number 4. So because this is Gauss divergence theorem, I have already written here. So we can put values from 3 and 4 in equation number 1. So let me show you what is equation number 1. You can see this is equation number 1. I can put the value of q from 3. I can put the value of this integration from equation number 4. Let us see what we obtain as a result of these substitutions. Let me go to the present slide. So you will get on the left hand side to be triple integration of del dot E, and on the right hand side I will have 1 by epsilon naught. It will be triple integration of del dot E and dv. Sorry, I forgot dv here. Let me put it. So I can bring right hand side to the left hand side. I will get triple integration of del dot E minus 1 by epsilon naught, and this is not correct. I think I put it wrong way. So it will be actually triple integration of rho dv, and it will be 1 by epsilon naught. Now it is correct. Now bring it left on the left hand side. It will be this, and it will be rho dv, that will be equal to 0. I can take this integration common, then it will become del dot E minus rho upon epsilon naught and dv is equal to 0. This is my equation number 5. Now see, this was the shape of the body. This was the shape of the body. What would happen if I draw the body to be of smaller shape? Let us say this is my body. My charge distribution is smaller. Or another other case, let us say, what would happen if the charged body was of large dimensions? Let us say it is of this size. So this is the charged body. So please tell me, when we are changing the shape or size of the body, we can very easily say that this is equivalent to changing the limits of integration. So we will give here a statement. I have already used this assertion. We will say the result of equation 5, the result of integration in equation number 5 is 0 for all closed surfaces of any size or any shape. Or this is equivalent to say that the integration is 0 independent of limits of integration. Therefore we can say that integration is 0 independent of limits of integration. And I told you previously, there is only one function which can satisfy this result. You integrate a function between different limits, and every time the result comes out to be 0. This is possible only and only if the integrand itself is 0. Therefore we need integrand to be 0. To be 0, only then this condition can be satisfied. Therefore what was the integration integrand? Let us see. This is integrand. This quantity which is being integrated is called integrand. So quantity in the round brackets is integrand. So therefore we have to write that equation 5 will be valid only if del dot E minus 1 by epsilon naught and rho is equal to 0, or you can say del dot E is equal to rho upon epsilon naught. This is called differential form of Gauss-Lyon vacuum. This is called differential form of Gauss law in vacuum. If you have any question, this was the problem told by you to me. If you have any question, you can ask from me. Otherwise, I would ask from you the next topic which I should discuss for you. Please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello.
Hello, please. Yes,
You apply.
I am listening to you. Please, if you have any question, ask me. So Swapnil Banga is asking, sir, triple integration क्यों की है? The answer is triple integration is of yes dq. It is of dq, charge. Charge is being integrated over the whole volume of the body. Any other question? Please ask any other question. Otherwise, from my side, the differential form of Gauss law in vacuum is over.
You are now muted. You are now unmuted.
Okay, Swapnil Bagga is asking why we have applied triple integration. So, without a triple integration, you cannot move within the volume of the body. If you apply double integration, suppose you have a sphere, and if you apply double integration, then you are moving only on the surface of the sphere. You cannot go to the center of the sphere in that case. For going from the surface to the center of the sphere and to cover the whole volume of the body, you have to go into the depth also. So integration has to be triple integration. So the charge is present everywhere within the body. So that is why integration has to be triple integration. Any other question? Please ask any question if you have. Uday Bhardwaj is asking something.
सर फर्स्ट ते सेकंड पेज शो करियो.
Okay. This is the first page.
You are now muted.
Okay, now some students have asked about the importance of curl. Let me tell you what is the importance of curl. Suppose there is a river. Kindly listen to whatever I am telling very carefully. After that, you can ask the questions also. So, suppose this is a two-dimensional river only flowing in the plane of this screen. Actually, the rivers are of three-dimensional. Or you can say I have taken the vertical section of a river. Okay. So, suppose there is a wheel here. For better understanding, I assume that wheel is massless. And suppose there are jaws on this wheel like this. Okay, now this is one streamline. I will call this to be streamline number 1, this to be streamline number 2, this to be streamline number 3. Similarly, this is streamline number 2 dash. This is streamline number 3 dash. Let us rule out first streamline number 3 and 3 dash. These streamlines are not touching the wheel, therefore these streamlines cannot produce any rotational motion in this wheel. Now let us see about the streamline number 2. You can see this streamline 2 is tangential to the boundary of the wheel. It is tangential to the boundary of wheel. If there is friction, let us assume that the liquid is there is a friction. Suppose there is a friction between wheel and the liquid. So as a result of this, the streamline will apply a tangential force at a point, let us say A, on the on the wheel, and because of that the wheel will tend to rotate in clockwise direction. Now suppose there is another point opposite to A, let us say this point is A dash. So this point is A dash, and at A dash I have a jaw, let us say this is the jaw, and at this point this streamline is again, let us say, tangential. Kindly forgive me for poor drawing. So this is tangential and it will try to produce anti-clockwise rotational motion. Let us say this point is B. Now I would write it logically here. The point B is passing through the center of the wheel. Therefore, point B, the streamline which is touching at point B, it cannot produce any kind of rotational motion. It can at the most drag the wheel toward up right side, but for the time being I am just taking only the rotational effect. Now you can see, suppose this liquid is non-viscous. If the liquid is non-viscous, or let us say there is no viscous drag, all streamlines are moving with the, let us say, same velocity v, then you can very easily understand that the rotational effect at A, because this velocity is v, and the rotational effect at A dash, because this velocity is also v, these will cancel out. Although individually both of the streamlines have a tendency to rotate the wheel, but on the overall there will be no rotation in the wheel. Similarly, the point this streamline at B cannot rotate at all. Now let us see another streamline. Look at this. Kindly look at it carefully. I am now drawing another streamline in between 1 and 2. Let me call this streamline as streamline 1A. Let me call it as streamline 1A. So now this streamline is passing like this. Now you can very easily see, suppose this point is C, and let me show this point C, and this is the boundary. This point is C, and the velocity of this streamline is v. Let me show it on a separate part. So let me draw a zoom figure at point C. So this was point C somewhere. If I draw a tangent here, so the tangent here will be like this. This is our wheel, this is point C, and this is streamline V. So if I draw a tangent here, let us say this angle is theta. I can resolve this streamline velocity into two components. This component which is along the tangent, it will be called Vt, tangential component, and this component which is toward the center of the wheel, it will be called Vr, radial component. Now you can very easily understand that just like the streamline 1 which was passing through the center of the wheel cannot rotate the wheel, in the same way the radial component of the velocity v cannot produce any rotational effect. In fact, a tangential component of the velocity v can produce a rotational effect. Now if this angle is theta, you can very easily see that Vt is actually v cos theta. On the other hand, I could have drawn rather this sorry, I would rather like to use this angle. I would like to use this angle. So VR will be actually V cos theta, and this will be therefore V sin theta. So it means you can easily understand that rotation of the wheel will be more, it will be directly proportional to the tangential component, that is V sin theta. So sorry for this, students, I would take my words back. Sorry, I am just to add some simplicity in my discussion. I now think that the previous actually nothing matters here, but the angle theta will add with the tangent will be able to help me to draw the particular result. Then Vt will be equal to V cos theta, and Vr will be equal to V sin theta. Now you can see this can produce only drag. It can move the wheel ahead it can drag, then this can rotate. So you also know that only tangential forces can produce rotational effect. So the rotational power of the streamline is directly proportional to the magnitude of tangential component of the streamline. So tangential component of the streamline is nothing but cos theta. Now suppose this from this part, because this is a circular wheel, so every small part of the wheel can be taken as a small straight line segment. So if the wheel is rotating like this, so you can trick this to be small straight line segment and this to be small straight line segment. So in if we divide the wheel into smaller parts, each part individually act as a straight line segment. I can call it to be dl, but the overall effect is not a straight line, it will be the boundary of the wheel. So you can very easily see that if this part which is tangential to the body, and if I keep now Vt as same, but I increase the tangential portion which is in contact with the streamline, then there will be more rotation because of the tangential force will have more effect. So as a result, the rotational power, I will use abbreviation Rp, is also proportional to the length dl of the tangential arc. I will draw the tangential arc here and here. So therefore I can define a quantity as rotational power. I can define a rotational power at small segment of a body as proportional to Vt and dl, and I can rather call it to be Vt dl, because this is the first time I am defining rotational power with respect to a vector quantity. Therefore I can presume that the constant of proportionality is 1, and it is exactly the rotational power, because this is arbitrarily defined. So I can, according to my convenience, I can take this constant of proportionality to be equal to 1. So therefore it will become V cos theta and dl. That is why I took it to be dl. After taking so many decisions, I finally just settled at cos theta. So it will be therefore V dl cos theta, it will be V vector dot dl vector. Now you see this is a velocity here, the velocity is also here, the velocity is also here. You can see rotational power will be somewhere here. As I have shown it, this point I think I took it to be a, this point I think it took to be b. This is producing rotational power, rotating power, let us say dr1, and this is producing rotating power, let us say dr2. Both of these efforts are producing rotation, but irrespective of these, even then the wheel was not rotating, because the overall effect of this rotation and this rotation, when we added these rotations, the overall effect was a cancellation effect. So therefore this is a rotation at a small portion of the wheel. What will the wheel or rotate or not rotate? For that we have to add up all these rotations to see whether the wheel will rotate. So I will therefore define total rotating power. It is also called circulating power of a vector field. The vector field in my previous in this discussion I took it to be velocity vector, but in general it could be anything: magnetic field, electric field, gravitational field, etc. So the total circulating power of a vector field is therefore the sum of small rotations, small rotating powers. So that was over the whole boundary, because this boundary is a closed path. So I would put a circular path. It should be V vector dot dl vector. So this is called rotational power, or this is also called circulating power. Now when you will do rigorous mathematics, it can be proved. I will not do this in physics class, but your mathematics teachers will convince you how to achieve this result. It can be proved using calculus. It can be proved using calculus that magnitude of curl of any vector is always equal to 1 upon s single integration of v dot dl provided limit s approaches 0. That is the area of, suppose we have a closed path C and open area inside it is s. So the total this is the total circulating power, and what is this? This is the area inside the closed path. So if I use this, it will become circulating power per unit area. So this is the magnitude of the curl. We can mathematically prove it. Now once we have mathematically proved it, now the right hand side we have made a discussion just now. Right hand side we now very easily understand that it is in fact when you discussed Ampere circuital law in your school physics, you called B dot dl equal to mu naught I. So most of the students might be thinking, why Ampere circuital law is called circuital law? What is the meaning of circuital? And most of the students just make an ad hoc assumption because it applies to circuits. That is not the correct. Actually, this is circulating power of magnetic field. This is circulating power of magnetic field. That is why it is called Ampere circuital law. Circuital does not mean here circuit, but a circuital means here circulating power or rotating power. So the circuital power of magnetic field is always equal to mu naught times the current threaded by the closed path. So if once we have done this proof using with the help of your mathematics teachers, then you can interpret what the curl signifies, since we know what is the right hand side of this equation. So magnitude of the curl is always equal to circulating power per unit area. That is the definition, that is the actually significance of the curl of a vector field. Now please tell me, if you have any problem, you can ask the question by unmuting yourself. Otherwise I will stop here. You can mark your attendance.
नेट नहीं चल गया सर ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਈਫਾਈ ਚਲਾਇਆ ਨਾ ਚੱਲ ਗਿਆ ਨੈਟ